So it's fair to say without the scholarship program and Vision 2030, your professional dreams wouldn't have really been realized. They were sort of big breaks for you just in terms of the just big policy changes that sort of enabled you to do what you want to do for a living, to pursue your dream.
Absolutely. 2 years before I came back to the kingdom, I cannot even enter the ministry where I worked at. But with the change, everything has been, I studied the architecture and I studied urban design, but I didn't have, I wasn't sure 100% that I would be able to practice in Saudi, even though I was fascinated with urbanism because of the struggles we have in Saudi Arabia, because I've seen our cities, I lived in our cities, and I know, oh my God, now that this could be resolved through something, which is urbanism, basically. Yeah, I'm very thankful.
This is the 966.
This is the 966, episode 49. Richard.
Halfway, almost halfway. Let's celebrate the next one. We'll celebrate the next episode.
We're almost to the next episode, which would be 50. Yes, 50 out of a forthcoming 2000 is pretty good. That's the goal. Just a thunderbolt, a lightning bolt of anxiety, just crushing right through us.
Well, the backstory on this one, of course, is that we've had to we've been dancing and jiggering because the thunderbolt reference. When I lost power, so. We're sort of doing it late. This is behind the scenes at the 966. So exciting.
The 966 has its own sausage making factory. It's lamb sausage. And what our guests and our listeners are hearing is that soon we're going to be getting to our really incredible conversation with Dhay Aldhawyan. Dhay is an architect and urban planner based in Riyadh who is head of the Center for Development of Urban Design and Planning of Saudi Cities, and has her own architecture and design firm in the kingdom, works with Mckinsey. Just an awesome conversation with Dhay. We'll get to that in just a few minutes. We'll also talk about all the official comings and goings in the kingdom recently, a little bit more about the stuff going on in the U.S. Saudi relationship you may have heard about. We'll finish it up, as always, with Yella, 6 top storylines from the week. Really quickly, before we get started, we love all the feedback we're getting, comments on our YouTube pages, especially all the chatter. Suggested guests, opinions that people share with us. We read it all. We see them all. We just ask that you be civil to the other commentators. You can pretty much say whatever you want to us. We have pretty thick skin, but just be civil to everybody else. We don't want to have to go in there and delete comments that are rude. So, yeah, Richard, let's get going.
As a public service, I guess we should notify in advance that one of the yellows is on golf.
Is it? Oh, yes, it is. It is. Yes. Public service. So, if you're so excited about that, just jump ahead on the YouTube page right to the golf segment. And
if not,
Richard, what's your one big thing this week?
As we've discussed, I'll rehash it, but just to try and add a little more context from the perspective of Mohammed bin Salman, President Joe Biden will visit Saudi Arabia July 15, 16, when he will meet with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. For the Biden administration, at least, this signals that Mohammed bin Salman is, in terms of optics anyway, officially in from the cold. I thought it'd be worthwhile to just take a look, because this caps quite a diplomatic 18 months for Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, a period in which circumstances, strategy, tactics, and the overwhelming imperative, we've seen this from the U.S. side, of national interest on the part of numerous foreign countries that have resulted in MBS transitioning from essentially a defensive diplomatic crouch in the post-Khashoggi period to becoming a regional leader and a global player. This has been an interesting transition. So let's look quickly at the timeline. 18 months ago, January 2021, Saudi Arabia hosted the Al Ula conference that ended the dispute with Qatar, which had begun in 2017. Later in 2021, in December, MBS visited Qatar to sort of affirm the Al Ula conference and that things were back on track intra-DCC in terms of communication and cooperation. That same month, Saudi Arabia hosted Emmanuel Macron, president of France. In March 2022, Boris Johnson came to town. In April 2022, Recep Erdogan came to town for the first time since 2017. Again, all meeting with MBS. Also in April, Saudi Arabia put in place a new leadership council to represent Yemen, and at the same time reached the truce with the Houthis, which has since been extended. During this period, any number of Arab heads of state met with MBS or came to Saudi Arabia. That includes President Sisi of Egypt, Prime Minister Mckinsey of Lebanon. So now MBS is on a tour: Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, Greece, and Cyprus. When he returns, he'll convene a GCC Plus event to feature President Joe Biden, which will include all 6 of the GCC heads of state, which, as we noted, GCC is back in sync, communicating. They've been coordinating and pre-planning for this visit, so they're very much in sync. Included with the GCC heads of states will be heads of state representatives from Iraq, Jordan, Egypt, and probably Morocco. I mentioned this last time. And by the way, MBS probably would have visited Iraq on this current tour if a government was in place. It's a little bit in disarray in Iraq, not particularly useful at this time to go there. The notable aspect of this current tour is it is essentially a king-making exercise. King Salman is in declining health. I mean, this is an opportunity for MBS to show his diplomatic chops and take an active leadership role in the region. And this is especially the case because he has prioritized efforts to align policies among this increasingly strong Arab bloc. So, of the Arab states, so for example, of the Arab states scheduled to meet with Biden in July, Saudi Arabia will now, as I mentioned, be very much in sync with the GCC partners, is increasingly close, is sort of refreshing and updating relations with Morocco after a little rough patch. But MBS will have just met with the Egyptian and Jordanian heads of state who are in town for that meeting. So they'll have their ducks in a row, and no small part due to Saudi Arabian MBS leadership. So it's quite a change from just 18 months ago. I should add here, apart from this perceived strategic advantage for Saudi Arabia to increasingly triangulate its foreign policy between the United States, China, and Russia, there was significant goodwill engendered during this period. You notice when I went down those heads of state that were coming to town or meeting with MBS, Macron, Boris Johnson, Recep Erdogan, I didn't mention a couple others. And that's because in February 2019, Xi Jinping hosted MBS in China. And in June 2019, Vladimir Putin very publicly shook hands with MBS at the G20 summit in Osaka and then came to Saudi Arabia to meet with him October 29th. I add that because apart from this tour that MBS is going on, but we look at, and Saudi Arabia is making choices about this triangulation, it's hedging its best for the U.S., and we can't go in depth there. But I think it's useful to point out in terms of how goodwill is perceived, that while MBS was out in the cold in the U.S., he was hosted in China by Xi Jinping, and Vladimir Putin came to town to meet with him. When we ask the question about why Saudi Arabia is hedging, there's not only strategic and tactical and the economic reasons, but I think there's also some personal things here. But anyway, the point being is it's been an extraordinary 18 months for MBS, and like I said, from a sort of a defensive crouch at the beginning of 2021 to a point here where he's doing a tour and will be meeting with the U.S. president and in a very strong and publicly active leadership role for the Arab world and for the GCC states in that region in general.
There's also a very strong economic, and you mentioned it, but there's a very strong economic reason for MBS's visit to each of these 3 countries. Really just a lot of Saudi money going into Egypt, Jordan, and Turkey, and each had its own reason to warm up to Saudi Arabia to host MBS. Jordan's economy is in a weak spot, needs investment. Egypt's economy, food prices are soaring, inflation is out of control, needs deals with Saudi Arabia. Turkey, same deal, soaring inflation, big visit from MBS, a thaw in Turkey-Saudi relations. It really has been a remarkable 18 months. It's I think very smart that you put it that way, because you need to take a very broad lens to see it that way. And, 18 months seems like a really long time in today's, yesterday is old news environment. And yeah, I think very well said, Mr. Wilson. It has been quite the turnaround.
Yeah, it has. And there's a bit of good luck involved. I mean, I mentioned circumstances, strategy, tactics, and the imperative of national interest in terms of other countries. You're exactly right. I mean, Egypt has really been hit hard by grain prices. Jordan's been struggling. And Turkey, obviously, we've talked about Turkey, is hit by inflation and a sagging economy. And of course, there was the unofficial boycott for most of 2021. So yes, you're right. That's a spot on. These countries have significant interest in having strong economic, and having Saudi Arabia being involved financially with their economies. It's a good thing, and Saudi Arabia has some money to spend. It's especially important for Egypt, and and we'll talk about later, I think, in Ayala. The Egyptian relationship is exceptionally important to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia wants to make sure that Egypt is stable and is able to be a cooperative and strong working partner. Egypt is very important to Saudi Arabia.
Richard, you and I both really love looking at the photos from the Saudi press agency of really just anything, because they have, 50 or 100 photos that come out every day, and it's a really good lens into the kingdom. Not a very well-known lens into the kingdom. You and I see it every single day. The photos from I do, yeah.
You're an amazing troller of that source.
I live there. But it was really interesting seeing the body language of the visit of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to Jordan, to Egypt, to Turkey. I mean, in Turkey, Erdogan and MBS hugged. They embraced after MBS got off the plane. It was just very warm. You could see that. It wasn't very formal or stiff. I mean, there was obviously the pomp and circumstance that always accompanies such a state visit, but it was very warm, and it sort of was indicative of where things are with the relationship. I'm not sure we'll see that level of warmth when President Biden visits visits Jeddah, July 15th through 16th, but just really interesting to sort of look into that. And yeah, I mean, very good point. 18 months can really change a lot in the world, as we all have seen.
Yeah, it has here.
Indeed. Richard, my one big thing this week, we've talked a lot about the U.S. Saudi relationship a good bit in recent weeks with President Biden's planned visit to Saudi Arabia July 15th through 16th. Last week, we really tackled the visit and all the drama, criticism, but also the opportunities. Great discussion, we say modestly. And you can watch that on YouTube. It's up there on the YouTube page right now. So if you just want to listen to that, we sort of break down everything going on with the U.S. Saudi relationship. And there really is a lot of good stuff out there now from the realist lens, especially about the U.S. Saudi relationship. We included in our daily news review today a recent item from the Council on Foreign Relations, John Alterman at CSIS, Hussein Ibish at Bloomberg. There's just a lot of this stuff coming out now. And really all week, we've included insights from both sides of this topic. That's what we do here on the 966. And for subscribers to our free daily newsletter, I'm really jamming this full of plugs, Richard. Anyway,
it's an amazing resource. My goodness.
It really is. It really is. And if you haven't subscribed to it and you're listening to this now in one way or the other, sustg.com, there's a big thing right there that says subscribe. It's totally free. And it comes to you every day. It has literally everything going on with Saudi Arabia right around 10 a.m. Eastern time. So
sorry to interrupt. With 20,000 subscribers across all platforms, you're late to the game. You need to subscribe.
So you better get on now. Yeah.
A lot of people really, value it and use it every day. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Not at all. No, you're late to the game, but you're not too late. It's not too late to get in. And we appreciate all of our readers. But Richard, my one big thing this week is not the visit itself, but all the things that are happening now with the visit confirmed between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, and both sides gear up for the visit. This is a recurring theme here on the show. And Richard, it actually led me to discover a new word in English. And this is not a surprise, really, because there are over 170,000 words in use today in English. So it's going to happen. But the word is inosculation. Have you heard of it?
I think I might have had a bout of that recently. I think I had a bad oyster.
Of the brain, yeah. Inosculation is a natural phenomenon in which trunks, branches, or roots of two trees grow together in a manner biologically similar to the artificial process of grafting. Something new every day. And this is what is happening with the U.S. and Saudi Arabia right now. Differences on the surface.
Mackerel.
Real differences. We never overlook any of them here, as you heard last week. But in fact, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia are two trees experiencing inosculation, especially below the surface with the roots. This can happen again above the surface. Below the surface, though, is when they grow together. The U.S.-Saudi relationship has been exactly that for 8 decades. And that's really why. It's the length of time. So much time has passed since the relationship was founded. So it was grown, and we talk about all the time, culture, the economy, security, defense, all these things. They're so intertwined. Last week, Richard, both you and I attended a very, very good event hosted by our very good friends at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to discuss opportunities and investment into Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's ambassador to the United States, Princess Rima bint Bandar, was there and gave some opening remarks, and she was, as she always is, terrific and impressive, as did the second hardest working man in Saudi Arabia, Richard, Dr. Majid Al-Kasabi, acting Minister of Media and Minister of Commerce. He must never sleep. It's unbelievable. But really just a great event. And thanks to the U.S. Chamber folks, I just want to throw a shout out here because they're just so good. Steve Lutz, Kush Chosky, Liz Clark, they're all doing a lot. They're always looking to help. They're such great people. So thank you to them. In addition to that, Khalid Al-Fallah, the Minister of Investment, is also set to visit D.C. in the next week or so. I'm not sure on the exact date, Richard, but it's happening. Al-Fallah is, of course, the former Minister of Energy and head of Saudi Aramco, who is now leading Saudi Arabia's drive to attract investment into the kingdom. He will be in Washington in advance of the Biden visit. So, of course, there's a lot of work happening, over at the White House and in the administration to prepare for this visit, maximize the deliverables and benefits to President Biden's trip. As I mentioned earlier, there's a good bit of ink out there being spilled on the visit on all sides, and that's a good thing. So just wrapping this up, lots going on between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia before the visit, in addition to the visit, around the visit, stuff that wouldn't be happening in all likelihood without it, and a chance to get this relationship back on track, producing benefits for both sides.
The word of the day?
Inosculation. See, this is an educational program. This is edutainment. It's educational and entertainment. So,
no, that's excellent. That's very nice, and I agree with you. A shout out to our friends at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. It's the largest chamber of commerce chamber in the U.S. Business Association in the U.S. Has been extremely influential, extremely active, and as you say, the folks we work with over there on the Saudi program and the Middle East program, Steve Lutz, Kush Chosky, Liz Clark, to repeat what you said, really high quality people, and we've partnered with them on a number of things, and we always enjoy it, and it's usually a very successful effort. So, and it's also their effectiveness, their reach, their membership is why the Minister of Commerce comes to speak with them and meet with them and have an all-day conference. It's why the Minister of Investment comes to meet with them and talk with them. They're a tremendous partner for Saudi Arabia. So good on you, U.S. Chamber of Commerce. You're doing good work.
Let's now, Richard, get to our conversation with Dhay Aldhawyan. She's so brilliant, and this is just such a great combo with her, learning about sort of how she got into architecture, what she's doing now. She's got a really great role in Saudi Arabia. You guys are going to love this. I was excited about talking with Dhay, and when we're talking about urban design in Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is something like 85% urbanized, similar to the U.S. But she points out, I think it's something that's important to note, and I hope you get this from this conversation. Saudi Arabia has its own issues, significant as they're dealing with legacy infrastructure issues. But it's fascinating to talk with her because she's right in the heart of this. The thinking, the conceptualizing, and trying to implement it, which is always the hard part. Is a really informational conversation. I learned a lot. We're very excited to be speaking now with Dhay Aldhawyan. Dhay is an architect and urban planner based in Riyadh who is head of the Center for Development of Urban Design and Planning of Saudi cities and has her own architecture and design firm in the kingdom. She has also worked extensively for Mckinsey and has therefore had her capable hands directly on helping Saudi Arabia achieve its Vision 2030 goals. Dhay holds both a Master's of Urban Design and a Master's of Architecture from the Washington University in St. Louis. And Dhay did her undergrad at SIU Carbondale in architecture. What an honor, Dhay. Thank you so much for joining us on the 966.
Thanks for having me.
It's wonderful to it is wonderful to have you, Dhay. We're really excited about this topic, and I should mention that we reached you through the Skilled Speakers program at the Ministry of Media, which you took part in, and I'm sure graduated with flying honors. During our conversation, Dr. Majid Al-Kassabi, is actually Dr. Majid Al-Kassabi, who was the Minister of Commerce, was in town last week, and we're delighted in terms of the 966 that there's a lot going on in terms of relationship. And he is also acting Minister of Media, and I mentioned him that, you know, we have a graduate of your skilled speakers program coming on the 966. And then when I mentioned this to you, Dhay, you've worked with His Excellency Majid Al-Kassabi.
Right. I did. When he was acting minister for MOMRA, which is Ministry of Municipal and Rural Affairs.
And that was back in when, 2019?
2019, he was with us, or he started with us January of 2019, or sorry, actually December of 2018. And then until February of 2020. So about a year and a few months.
As Lucian says, we call Majid Al-Kassabi the second hardest working man in Saudi Arabia.
Yes, definitely.
I had actually forgotten he was acting Minister of Umrah, but I don't, you know, I'm not surprised in the least.
Yeah.
But Dhay, how'd you? I was curious, and we'll catch up here. But you did your undergraduate and graduate work at Washington University in St. Louis.
Right.
That's an unusual choice. How'd you end up there?
When I finished my studies in SIU, or basically the last semester in SIU is when you start thinking about where do you want to apply for your master's. And I had a list of universities in the US. I tried to pick top-ranked university in general, but my criteria was to choose a university or a architecture program where their focus is on design theory, mostly because I come from a very technical background studying SIU in Carbondale. It was very heavily technical architecture program.
The challenge,
as they say, they say you graduate from SIU, you know how to put a building together. So I got that covered, but then I have to have the more theoretical approach to architecture.
So I'm sure it was challenging. Both are good institutions, and when you finished up there, you came back and you opened up your Dhay Aldhawyan architect shop right away.
Yes. So I was working like in 2016 all the way to probably mid 2017 to have all the paperwork done, to have an official office. And then I got also the opportunity to work with MOMRA, and which turned into a full-time job with them. Also the opportunity to consult for Mckinsey and Company through my firm in multiple projects. That actually continued until probably the last project that I worked with them was the Jeddah downtown. Also the Expo, Dubai Expo, the building, the Saudi building, Dubai Expo.
Oh, really?
Was one of the projects that I have.
You worked on that?
I didn't work directly. I was consultant on that.
Oh, gotcha.
So in the multiple workshops that they have done to finalize the ideas and around the project and to make sure that when it's implemented, it will do what it meant to do, and to make sure that we are on the right track in terms of like what is it that we want to tell the world through that project.
That was, and Lucian, when we for the YouTube for the video, we should have a picture of that, because that was cool. That Saudi pavilion at the Dubai Expo was a raging success, and I think something like 4.5 million visitors.
Right, and, it was the most visited pavilion basically in the expo.
And I guess the success of that, I know because Saudi Arabia has put in now to host the Expo 2030.
Right,
and I'm sure some of the motivation of that was watching that Dubai Expo and how successful it was, and I think, interestingly enough, Lucian, we've done segments on this. As I don't know if you know, but Russia dropped out, so now it's the original 5 competing ones is down to 4. I think Saudi Arabia's application is probably pretty competitive. But
The
that's
odds have
fascinating.
just increased significantly with Russia out. So,
Um,
and Day, did McKinsey find you to start consulting work, or did you pitch your services to McKinsey?
Well, no, I was involved in the quality of life program kickoff workshop that been conducted in the Kingdom in 2017. Actually, very early 2018. They contacted me in 2017. And it was through Her Royal Highness Princess Rima bint Bandar. I have met her by chance, and she invited me to the workshop. And during those days, it was multiple day workshop. I think it was like 4-day, full day workshops. And during those days, I worked closely with actually a St. Louis native, Guy Berry, and he's a vice president in McKinsey and Company, vice president for planning in the Middle East. And so we worked together for the 4 days, and at the end of the 4 days, he called me later, and he's like, "Are you interested in consulting as a local expert with us at McKinsey?" And because we have multiple projects going on, and the first project I believe that I worked with them at was the Roshan for the PIF, which is a mixed development. Housing, mixed use, and it's basically on the district level. It's basically neighborhoods throughout the kingdom in different cities that will achieve the quality of life required in our vision and what we want our new neighborhood to look like. But it's mostly starting from a green field, so it's not like working on existing neighborhoods, but actually selecting areas of cities that haven't been developed, and then work on that from the ground, like starting from zero basically, and implementing all the ideas around great planning and urban design for neighborhoods and cities, and exploring with the theories as well, trying to understand the successes around the world and see if we can implement it throughout the kingdom, and I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone is excited. Now, I personally know a few people who have applied to buy villas in Roshan, Riyadh, and they have got accepted, and they are through with the process. And I think they are getting their villas around 2024 and 2023.
Roshan is essentially PIS, public investment funds, housing and real estate arm, construction, housing, real estate, and yes, they have some really large projects that I think they're moving ahead quite quickly on.
Right.
Fascinating. So you've been in the middle of all sorts of things. So let's go back. They found you you were invited at the Urban 20.
As well, yes.
But your executive team member. Is that relationship still ongoing?
When I am needed for now, but I used to be involved heavily in the U20 until the summit. But then after the summit, I'm not sure if there is a new team that will be picking up, or I'm just not as involved after the summit.
You're called on.
Yeah.
They send out a day signal when they need your help.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the Center for Development of Urban and Design and Planning of Saudi Cities. What's the progression of that? It was originally under the Ministry of Municipal and Rural Affairs. Is that correct?
True. So it was established in the Ministry of Municipal and Rural Affairs in 2018 by the Minister Abdul Latif Al Sheikh at the time. And it was a ministerial order, basically, and it's connected to His Excellency's office, making sure that the bureaucracy doesn't get in the way of the things that His Excellency wanted to achieve through the center. And after that, His Excellency Majid Al-Qasabi took over Mumra after His Excellency Abdul Latif Al-Sheikh has retired. I was fortunate also to work during that period with His Excellency Majid Al-Qasabi, but then His Excellency moved on into other roles, and I got the chance also to work with His Excellency Majid Al-Higib, who's the current Mumra minister as well, through the center. In September of 2020 is when we officially moved to Development Authority Support Office, DASU, with His Excellency Ibrahim Sultan, who's I would say the godfather of planning and urban design in Saudi, or the expert in all of that, because he have been involved in all the projects almost, and he's I think part of all the committees on the big mega projects, all spatial planning and development projects in the kingdom. NEOM, PIF, you call it, he's part of that.
Fascinating. So September 2020, the Center for Development of Urban Design, which you were head of, and planning of Saudi cities, sort of became a standalone agency. And
yeah, yeah.
well, no, it doesn't matter really. It's no longer under the municipal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. I mean, and you have first explain to us what it, because the key, the word is sustainable urban development. Mm-hmm. And that's the phrase. And you look at the G20 or the UN, they have 17 different sections of what is sustainable development, so what if you can give us, for layman's terms, for people who aren't experts, what are the key factors in sustainable urban development?
Simply is when you achieve multiple factors at once. Meaning, if you can have an ease of movement, which means public transportation in general and transportation in cities, that won't affect the environment by the CO2 emission, that's sustainable. Also, that will improve people's life by getting from place A to place B safely in a short time, and in a more sustainable way, which is using a metro or which can carry more than one or four persons at a time, that will achieve that. But then you also have it in multiple layers in planning. You have it in sustainable planning in general, which is having, let's say, development that are mixed use, no mono use areas, trying to connect the public transportation or the public system in general to where people, or connect people from where they live and work. Try to also look at the density in the city, and how do you also add that layer into the equation, where public transportation then become really efficient, because then you are actually planning exactly where you need the nodes to be, and how do you want the density around those nodes, where it's worth investing on a bus system and a metro system and other modes of transportation, I would say, around the idea. So it's a lot of things. It's not just having a LEED certified building. It's not about it's more about like the way you plan a city more sustainably, and the way you can change people's lives and people way of living around the city, and without compromising, where you give them also an ease in life. If it's hot out there, then how do you figure out more solutions to that, to convince people to use your public transportation, where it become actually usable and effective? Because if you don't resolve other areas in the challenge, then no one would use it, and it won't be that sustainable, really, because you're just running a whole transportation system aside to people not even wanting to use it, but actually prefer to be in their cars and the comfort of their cars. Right. So also to putting this right policies to make sure that you enforce the idea of sustainability and public transit and and around the quality of planning in terms of how you really deal with the existing condition of cities, not just the new or the greenfield cities.
Fascinating, especially on that ease of movement, and that seems to be your biggest challenge if you're an urban designer in Saudi Arabia, is the existing condition of cities. And there's an interesting study on Saudi cities, and I'll just read this to you. Saudi urban development can be seen through their symptoms, and these symptoms would be urban sprawl, traffic congestion, low density development, a loss of place character, which I guess is a common term in your expertise. It is evident that all major cities in the kingdom, Riyadh, Jeddah, Mecca, Medina, and Dammam, have experienced a rising decrease in urban density while they develop. So you've got sprawl, you've got decreasing density, and clearly we all know, traffic congestion. So how do you address? When we talked earlier, you aren't necessarily just working in major cities, you're working in any number of places around the kingdom.
Right.
How do you address this legacy structure that really leads to things that can't really be called sustainably attractive?
So the solution that we're not sure even if it's going to be the solution, but we hope that this would be at least a part of the solution that we're hoping for by 2030, is something that we call the urban code. But when we say urban code, we're not necessarily talking about form-based code, which is the U.S. New urbanism approach into the new urbanism movement, I'd say. It's not exactly a master plan. It's not exactly it's more of something that is very special to us and to our problems, where we want to learn from the world, definitely, and the best practices, but then we want to apply it to our challenges and our problems, because we definitely face totally different problems from other countries. Our conditions are different. Our way of planning is, even though there are some similarities between large cities in the US, I'd say Houston or like LA or other large cities that are car oriented, there are big similarities between the countries, but in general, we really have our also own challenges and problems that we have to resolve.
So can I interrupt you there? And I don't want to derail you, because interestingly enough, the urbanization rate in Saudi Arabia is about 85%, which is equivalent to the US and Europe. But I think it's fascinating that you have that number. Let's so the number's the same, the problem's the same. But you're saying that's not the case. They're different problems, and definitely, I'd love for you to explore how those different on the ground problems.
I think, one of the biggest challenges that we have to resolve, definitely, in order for us to really achieve progress on that regard, is looking again at the urban boundaries or the built area boundaries for all cities, because we have a boundary that keep extending without the realistic expectation of having a density, if that's what it requires to have sustainable public transportation systems and mobility, sustainable mobility plans and all of that. So that probably have to be looked at seriously if we want to achieve what we want to achieve, because we keep Riyadh is getting larger and larger horizontally.
It's going to be Riyadh before long. It's going to be it's going to be part of Tabuk. I mean, it keeps
right if we don't stop.
Yeah,
exactly. And also, it's funny because even other cities, like in the south, let's say Najran, for instance, the built boundary or the urban boundaries for the city of Najran could actually be enough for us to build within for the next 100 and 150 years, and I think we won't achieve the density that we think that it's required. So looking at that, that's definitely, I don't think there is a lot, probably there are conversations. I am not part of these conversations, but this is something that I bring up as whenever I have the chance, because you can plan whatever you like and you can fix whatever you like if you don't look at that first. and adjust those boundaries and making sure that you really restrain the building beyond certain area within. I mean, you can have boundaries, but it has to have a timeline to that. So in 50 years, we can extend to this level or that. And they do it. It's just not realistic what we have so far now for the extent amount of the next 50 years, let's say, in Riyadh and other cities. So rethinking that definitely, sorry.
No. The purpose being, and so I can understand, the purpose being to achieve a greater density.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I tell you the urban code and how we're trying to do this urban code, I think it's the most special to Saudi Arabia, because I think probably we will call it the Saudi urban code, because it combines both planning and urban design at the same time. Since we either have regional plans that are not being updated, or we have missing plans, local and regional plans. Mumra used to do their plans on house, and it's called structural plan. And structural plan really just give you a very basic, cookie cutter type of approach, where you just have streets, you have your municipal services, and then you have your city services, you have your education, health, and all of that covered. But it's not necessarily planned in a way where it's something that you study in a certain time and understand your growth and understand the effect of such thing. So what we're trying to do now is to have this urban code going, trying to fix what it can fix in the meantime. But at the same time, we're also working on we are tendering for a regional plan and local plans for the whole kingdom now, for all the regions. And we want to probably, because we started the urban code and we tried it in multiple places. So we had a regional urban code that been done in Asir, which was our first, basically, on that level. And it's for Asir region and then Abha city. And then we have one for the Red Sea, which is the area, I'll call it the leftover areas of the big or giga projects in the Red Sea coast, between the areas between Amala, Red Sea project, and Neom, which is those beautiful little towns along the coast. That code supposedly covering that part, but we come out every time it comes back on the same challenge, which is a lot of what is required in the code we cannot really achieve until we get our plans, local plans and regional plans, redone or updated or done if it's not. So we're learning as we go. We're doing things. We didn't stop. We're trying our best to understand the situations and what's happening. We also trying in different scales. So we did Asir, we did Abha, and then we did the Red Sea, and then now we're doing Durma and Mzahmiya, which is an area close to Riyadh. We call it the countryside of Riyadh, I would say. So multiple scales, multiple approaches, like the one for Durma and Mzahmiya, we're doing master plan and a code as well. So it's really, we're just trying to do it the right way without rolling out an idea, without understanding the implication to that idea or the success of that idea. There will always be challenges, and there will always be things that we couldn't do or cover, but as long as we're trying to learn from our these projects that we have tendered and started, and the studies are halfway, some of them, but we are realizing with the time going that, oh wait, we cannot do this because we don't have that, or the data here cannot support that progress. Maybe we should stop, and maybe we should do the plans first, and then we go back to the codes. We have also another project which is a guidelines throughout the whole kingdom for each region, which is just we wanted to, or His Royal Highness actually wanted just to have this understanding of, or not understanding, but actually like having enough information on regions and their identity early on, So when all of these projects go on, either the urban code projects or the planning, they have a solid start by having those guidelines. Like we have an understanding of what is really the basics that we need to understand on identities in these regions. Because if you have been to Saudi Arabia, and I'm pretty sure you have,
Yes,
did you?
many times. Yes.
You would go to multiple cities and they look exactly the same. If you go to any neighborhood in Riyadh and you start driving, you would think that you are in Abha or Qasim, or even though Abha is a mountain city, and,
Right.
and if you go to Jeddah, it's a coast city, and if you go to Qasim, it's just Najd, which is basically like Riyadh. They all look the same and feel the same, which is what His Royal Highness is trying to avoid and rethink about, like how is it that a country this diverse
Right.
in terms of geography and culture have exactly the same identity everywhere you go? Very modern, very plastic. It's a challenge, and this is part of what we're trying to do in all of these projects.
It is fascinating. That's interesting you say that, because my question was, I mean, obviously Asir and Jeddah and outskirts of Riyadh, and I mean, that's entirely different identities and cultures and habits. But like you say, the design is all similar, and that's what he wants to get to, is something that's a little more, to use the terminology, has more place. They've loss of place has occurred.
Mhm.
So when you say tender, so your group, I mean, will come in and but like tender for who would be bidding on these tenders?
Very well, it depends. So we sometimes require a consortium of different expertise, but we mainly focus on the spatial planning. So companies that have portfolios on working on scale of a city, scale of a region, urbanism, have done successful projects here and there that we can actually check out and know that they will be able to deliver. So in the background, knowing the challenges also that we have, and how do we make sure that we, get them up to date on what are the situation in Saudi, and how do we approach our projects or changes that we want to achieve in our projects. So mainly spatial planning, but we always require policy teams, we require legal teams, we require strategy teams, so it depends on the project and the size of the project. There will be a consortium required to work together to make sure that we are achieving what we want to achieve in different projects, different requirements. But mostly it's foreigner companies, big companies, Europe, U.S. and other.
Interesting. How does your shop engage, because there's huge, Jeddah Central, $20 billion projects is huge. Royal Commission for Riyadh City has just extraordinary plans and any number of projects ongoing. How do you interact with those agencies?
Okay, so for Riyadh City projects, which is the Royal Commission, I don't interact that much, or the office, because it's a Royal Commission. When it's a Royal Commission, it has its own board, its own
Right.
way of, so they don't really, at least I don't, on the project that I'm involved in, except if there is a project that will have an effect on Riyadh City or close to Riyadh City, or has, an implication, or it will be affected also by the fact that it's close to Riyadh.
Right.
So one of the projects, Burman Zahmiya, we have to be aligned with the Riyadh Commission, Royal Commission, but also we require a lot of information from them, from Amana and other entities, as well as other giga projects like Giddiya, because it's adjacent to Giddiya.
And
so it is required, but it's not an actual involvement.
Right. But in terms of the urban code, the concept, the urban code, the conceptual framework, is that kingdom wide, or is that your shop? or
Okay, so it started with all the, because we are DASO, so Development Authority Support Office. Not every region in Saudi has a development authority, but a lot of them now having, some of them we either testing or we are not sure if it's the right thing to start with a development authority for the size, for the population, or the number of people living in that area, or the challenges, and the surrounding area. So the regional and development authorities are now, we have, I think, 6. We have Eastern Province. We have Mecca, Mecca have its own royal commission, but then we have the region, and then we have Hail, Asir, and we have multiple ones that are coming. They announced recently offices that might be becoming also a development authority, and then we have Medina. So these are 5. Okay, Riyadh was the 6th, but now Riyadh is the Royal Commission, so it's not part of the scope.
Right.
And then, so we started with doing only codes for, or like even for the plans, we started with just the regions that are under our office, which is under the development authorities. But the other regions are required to be done through Mumra. However, we have a lot of now joint work with Mumra. So all the regional plans and the local plans are really between the Development Authority Support Office and Mumra. Mumra covering the regions that are under their governance, and then we are covering the regions under the development authorities. But we work together now. It used to be totally different projects, each do their own thing, but now we're more in sync on working together on these projects.
That's encouraging. That's critical. It's interesting that you're in the process. Saudi Arabia is now in the process of doing this first census since 1992, I think, which I assume will return all sorts of really interesting information about.
Sorry, first what?
A census.
Mm.
National census. What's that?
Oh, you mean the National Spatial Strategy, the NSS?
No, it's a census of actually determining, the population numbers, where people live, demographics, that sort of thing. They haven't done a national census, I think, in since '92, but I'm not sure. So yeah, you have census takers are out now, affirming and confirming where people live, who lives where, and that sort of thing. And I assume that feedback will be interesting in terms of urban planners, because you'll have a better idea of how many people are living and where they're living.
Right.
What can a city like Riyadh do? For example, we've talked in the past on the 966 about how important the white land decision was, because this was key areas of property in urban space they weren't being developed, and now they're available for development, and so, but the sprawl continues, and part of that, I mean, some of that is, I don't know if you take this into account, but I suppose it's part of your thinking. The kind of housing that young Saudis want is a little different now. It's evolving. I mean, the large single family compounds, multiple family compounds, those aren't really what's being built now. They're apartment units and smaller homes and in more dense communities. So much is changing, but how do you manage that? How do you stop or slow that sprawl?
I think
should we do a separate show on that?
right? With a room full of VPs from Riyadh, I'd say Royal Commission.
Yeah.
But I mean, see, I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what's the answer for the question. I mean, I can have ideas, I can have suggestions, but I'm not sure what could be the actual solution to such, because yes, even though there was taxes on the white lands that have been issued, to regulate such problem that we're facing, especially in Riyadh, because of the land value. But I don't see it. It's changing, but slowly. I think a lot of people can afford these taxes, and I'm not sure if I remember they have visited us here, and they wanted to work with the center on finding, which is the company responsible for the white land. It's under the Ministry of Municipal now and Housing. And they wanted to explore and see if we can put expertise together to rethink the idea of taxes on white lands, and see if there will be better solutions to that. I know they have 4 stages to it, and I think they are at stage 2 now, and I think the 3rd stage will be to approve a policy where it doesn't have to be that you own 10,000 kilometers of land to be taxed, but even if it's divided, so whatever is under your name will be collected in general, and then you will be taxed on that. Because what they face, one of the problems that developers will actually go and subdivide those big lands, and they get away with the tax requirement that they are supposed to. And it's a big challenge, definitely, but I think there's lots of angles to it that it has to all work together in order for it to stop the bleeding and the sprawling in Riyadh. Yeah. White land, definitely one thing, and urban boundaries or built boundaries is also a really big thing to rethink it. I don't think it's very realistic that we want to have this mixed use and dense developments around the city if we still allow the expansion of the built or building boundaries to the city.
Yes, I mean we focus a lot on Saudi Arabia, and that's something that occurs all the time. In that is trying to meld and bring together, multiple different goals all at the same time. Because many different things moving, and trying somehow to thread all this together to a result that everybody wants to see. Right. And it's always a complex. Nothing stages at the same time, really, and so it's really a complex. It's never straightforward, and a lot of people like to make it seem straightforward, but it isn't. Because I have to think part of, for example, the Kingdom Financial District, is sort of being repurposed a little bit to have more residential than originally planned, which is a good thing for what you're trying to achieve. I have to think that young Saudis' housing expectations, which tend to incline to be more dense, they become more comfortable with the dense environment, is good for your planning. But again, these are long-term trends. It's not like you can just snap your fingers and make it happen. You got to see it unfold. But it's really fascinating to hear you talk about how trying to shape it and a Saudi urban code, and trying to introduce conceptual goals that inform everything that goes on. It's really interesting. It's also interesting how you sort of have to work around and coordinate with these major like Jeddah Central and the RC Royal Commission for Riyadh City. You work with these; they're ongoing as well. They have plans, but you sort of work with them as also.
So to resolve that particular problem or issue that we're facing, which is coordinating between all these big projects, we have a project called Planning Framework for Saudi, and for regional authority. And basically, what we're trying to do with this project, it's not a build project. It's more of a study or a research understanding. How do we work together as one not one entity, but because we all have the same goal, which is to achieve Vision 2030. Vision 2030 have multiple goals, but these goals really, at the end, it's about the quality of life. It's about the GDP in the country. It's about, and it's heavily spatial, definitely. And we are working, as you said, in a scattered way, in terms of like entities planning in their own way. And then we have big projects that are happening. And then we have royal commissions. And then we have Mumra and the Amanas or municipalities. And then we have development authorities and the health sector planning their own hospitals and clinics and all of that. And so it's a mix of everyone. And Ministry of Culture have their own projects within cities and preservation projects, of course. So we're trying to understand first who's doing what and how are they doing it. We're not proposing that we demolish everything that we have been doing or to ignore everything and suggest a new framework for planning in the kingdom, but we're just saying we want to improve the way we do things in terms of planning and spatial planning. So we just want to understand and we want everyone to be involved. We know that multiple projects in different entities have taken place in the past, but because of the lack of evolving all the entities and ministries and from the beginning and have them as the stakeholder and part of these studies and part of the understanding and part of the solution that we will come up with at the end. It didn't really work well, but if our focus now is to actually work on this planning framework and make sure that everyone is involved, everyone who has a role in the planning or spatial planning in the kingdom, any entity, any ministry, any big giga whatever projects that are happening have to be in the same table together, where we start understanding the roles and responsibilities for each of these entities and how do we interact with each other and when do we cross-section with each other, because there are a lot of also things like data collection and data management and data sharing and all of that been done separately for each entity, which it could be brought in together and in terms of planning and spatial planning. And if there is a certain like data center or something to keep all this information where everyone will be informed, and instead of like having to have, God knows, 6 months of current state assessments, trying to just collect the right data for every projects that we do from every other entity. So it's more of a not creating something new, but actually working on the system that already exists and improving that system to make it more efficient, let's say.
Dave, how did you get into this? Like, what inspired you to get into this field? Can you tell us a little bit about your journey before you went to college here in the U.S., how you got into architecture, urban planning, and what inspired you to do it?
Yeah, so for some reason, I have grew up wanting to be an architect. It wasn't an option in Saudi Arabia at the time. Of course, now with all the changes for the past, say, 15 years or 10 years, now we have architecture schools for girls, and girls can become architects and they can study architecture in the kingdom. But at my time, when it was my time, there wasn't programs for architecture for girls. And this has always been what I wanted to do. I like spatial thinking. I'm more into, I'm really interested in the built environment and interested in spatial thinking. Or anything that has to do with the spatial, like just even imagining spaces and all of that. So I always wanted to study architecture, didn't get the chance. I went to accounting in Saudi until I got the chance to get a scholarship, King Abdullah scholarships, and I went to the U.S. and I studied. Basically, I just enrolled in SIUC for architecture school. And then after that, as I told you earlier, which is I choose to study in WashU later on because I have already covered the technical part of the architecture field, but now I want to get more into the theory and design theory in general. So I choose multiple schools. I got accepted actually in all of them, but I choose to go to Washington University for different reasons. One, it was one of the top 10. I think it was ranked 6th in the nation at the time. Second, family reasons. My husband and my son were still in Carbondale, Illinois. I wanted a place where it's close, so I'm not far from my family. My husband works in the US since then, and he's still working there, actually. Yes. He's a data engineer, senior data engineer in Emeren, sustainable energy and utility company in the Midwest. Yeah, so I got to study my master's in architecture, but by mistake, or it's just I wanted to choose one studio. I was put in the wrong studio. I actually fought for that. Like I didn't want to study that. Or I didn't want to be in that studio, really, like because I was interested in parametric design, and there was another studio on parametric design, and it was supposed to be my first choice. You have no idea how I fought against studying or taking that studio, but I had to. There was no other choice, so I went ahead and I took it, and. I was fascinated with urban design. I was fascinated with the total of urbanism in general, like the city relation to the building and the human aspect of it, the social aspect of it, and all of that. I finished the studio and I went right away to the chair of the urban design school, and I was like, I have to enroll in urban design. I'm really interested in the field, and I didn't know much about it before. And now I understand more about architecture. That I have a glimpse of on urbanism in general. And he required a lot of crazy things. And it was my finals, but I had to turn multiple things to him. I remember staying up until 4 and 5 in the morning, and I have classes at 8 and submissions and stuff. But I gave him everything that he asked me to do. Like I did everything, and he accepted me. So I enrolled also as a dual degree. So I enrolled in the urban design masters as well. And just my graduation was postponed for another year, which is fine. I was good and on track in architecture. It wasn't a big delay, so it was okay.
So it's fair to say without the scholarship program and Vision 2030, your professional dreams wouldn't have really been realized. They were sort of big breaks for you, just in terms of the just big policy changes that sort of enabled you to do what you want to do for a living, to pursue your dream.
Absolutely. 2 years before I came back to the kingdom, I cannot even enter the ministry where I worked at. But with the change, everything has been, I studied the architecture and I studied urban design, but I didn't have, I wasn't sure 100% that I would be able to practice in Saudi, even though I was fascinated with urbanism because of the struggles we have in Saudi Arabia, because I've seen our cities, I lived in our cities, and I know, oh my God, now that this could be resolved through something, which is urbanism, basically. I'm very thankful.
So, you're one of the first women, architects in this modern era in Saudi Arabia, and urban designer. And I'm curious because in the United States, there's an issue with half of all architecture students being female, and not all architects. It's like a vast majority are male that actually pursue a career in the field. Is Vision 2030, which is increasing women's, participation in the workforce, is that happening also in your field as well?
Yes, I think so, because it's I think now it doesn't matter if you are a male or female. Probably, preferably, you're a female because there are targets in Vision 2030 that they want to achieve. So having more women in the workforce will also help us achieve those targets that we're trying. But I think we are at a point where it's very important to make sure that we put people who have the right education, the right expertise, because we're still short of expertise. We're still short of capabilities in the kingdom. There's still a lot of like scholarship programs that are going on right now. We know that King Abdullah scholarships has stopped, but now there are multiple scholarships programs through different ministries, and it's all to make sure that we have we have realized and recognized the need for more capable or capabilities in certain fields that haven't been covered in the past. So yeah, I mean, I'd say that probably also supported the role of women in the kingdom and in Vision 2030. Of course, and the uplift that we got too as women in the kingdom, and they have paved the way for us. Even though you know that there is a lot of challenges and struggles to all of a sudden you have to work with women, and all of the we don't, you know, like I'd say the conversation wasn't there, and now. But I felt it like for the past 5 years, things have changed dramatically from when I just got there. Like when I got there, what is she gonna do? What is she gonna, you know, like what is she gonna add? Like, you know, everything, and we don't need, you know, like. But now there is more acceptance to women roles in the kingdom and in certain fields that weren't necessarily existing before the vision and before the transformation.
And I guess the last question, if I could ask you, who has most inspired your personal vision and design? Like, do you have some figures, either historical or current, that you follow very closely as very influential to you, that you think are brilliant and you try to emulate, or who inspires you?
Well, in urbanism, I'd say Young Gale. Young Gale, just because of his interest in cities and in livable cities and cities for people and safe public realms for everyone.
Dhay Aldhawyan, head of the Center for Development of Urban Design and Planning of Saudi Cities, consultant with McKinsey, U.S. educated. What an awesome discussion today, Dhay. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's get to Yella. Richard, what do you think?
Yella. I couldn't even get it out. Saudi in a minute.
Well, I don't know how this started, but it's now its own thing. And now a life of its own.
It is. Every time I do it, it's like, you know, when you as a kid, you get the giggles in church and you couldn't stop. Now we do it.
That still happens to me, by the way. I still start laughing in places. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
church and anything. Yeah.
When you get your kids are going to get it, and it's going to be hilarious as you're trying to shush them and they just can't stop. The Saudi initial public offering of Middle East Domino's pizza franchise has received orders for all shares on offer within hours of opening its books, according to Bloomberg. Alamar Foods, which is 42% owned by the Carlyle Group, is going to offer and do its IPO, and is expected to be the company is expected to be assessed valued at about $770 million.
A significant amount of money, Richard. Investor appetite for local listings remains strong. It's been sort of a setback recently for Saudi stocks. They erased this year's gains on Monday, sort of following the global trend, 18% below a high in May. Bargain hunters, of course, stepped in at the end of it to sort of stop the bleeding there. But I mean, right now, if you look at it, it's, and I was unable to really find one, but are there any IPOs that have happened in Saudi Arabia that haven't had their books covered recently? And it just seems like, yeah, it just seems like this is the time. If you're on the fence about an IPO, either in Tidal or in the Nomu market, if you're thinking about it and you're a company CEO, this is a good time to do it.
Markets hit a little blip with the inflation issues and general gloomy outlook on the global economy. I mean, it's still, Saudi economy is still expected to grow. I love this story. I'll tell you why. What was the word you used in your one big thing? Inosculation?
Inosculation, yeah.
Inosculation. I had a couple little factoids about this. So this is Alamar Foods, which is a major franchisor for Domino's. They also have Dunkin' Donuts, by the way, none in the U.S. and none in Saudi Arabia, but they have some in Jordan and Egypt and Morocco. But they have a lot of Domino's franchises in Saudi Arabia. And they opened the first Domino's in Saudi Arabia in 1992. I mean, Alamar's 30 years old, but they opened it. It was one of the first global outposts for Domino's, which has 500 locations now in the Middle East, North Africa, and Pakistan. This is Alamar, has 500 locations. Domino's was founded in 1960. I mean, it's in the U.S. in Ypsilanti, Michigan. So it's it's a true blue American company. And here it is. I didn't know this. It's been in Saudi Arabia since 1992. This is a close relationship, and the Carlyle Group, which invested in Alamar in 2011, has 42% of Alamar Foods. I don't know what they paid for in 2011, but they're going to come out of this with a really nice profit. As I mentioned, it's going to be valued around $770 million. That is the Alamar Foods in general. But this is definitely one of those unseen inosculations below the root, below the surface, roots growing together. Alamar's been working with Domino's for close to 30 years, over 30 years, and Dunkin' Donuts as well. So it's an interesting story.
Domino's is so good. I grew up on Pizza Hut as like the chain pizza restaurant that we would go to. There was one in McLean Richard, and I don't think it's there anymore. But Domino's rules. And actually, the last time we were in Riyadh, they were just getting Uber Eats going, and I remember getting a bunch of Domino's to the hotel room. Yeah, and probably came back about 15 pounds heavier.
We went to what's the pizza place we went there? Dang it, it's a local pizza one. We've done it before, but anyway.
I could go for some pizza right now, to be honest with you. I'm reading the story. But yeah, there's another inosculation right there below the surface. A non-artificial grafting of relations. Yellow number 2, Russia-Saudi relations are, quote, as warm as the weather in Riyadh, unquote, the kingdom's energy minister, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, told media on Thursday after a meeting in Russia with the country's deputy prime minister. This is according to a report in Arab News. That's pretty warm, Richard. At the time of this recording, it's about 104 degrees in Riyadh, 40 degrees Celsius. Would not feel like I'm going out on a limb calling that not warm, but hot. Anyway, the prince made a surprise appearance at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum while not being listed on an official schedule.
Guess what? Saudi Arabia and Russia are friendly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, if you're Saudi Arabia, so if you're OPEC, and for many of the countries, the revenues from fossil fuel sales and crude and natural gas and other things are the lifeblood of their economies, have been historically. They're keenly interested in trying to manage the global price. You can argue all you want if it's a monopoly. But looking at it from the OPEC, so Saudi Arabia, leading member of OPEC, from their perspective, fine, we're going to do everything we can to try and control our primary source of revenue and not have it, tank, and also we know not have it get too excessive. So when you're looking at OPEC is 50% of global oil exports. Saudi Arabia alone is about 15 to 17% of global oil exports. Russia's number 2 at 11.6 of global exports. So why not? Why not bring in, Russia as part of OPEC Plus? Especially this was in 2016 when oil prices have crashed. From OPEC's perspective, they lost all control of the markets to U.S. shale. Why not? Let's reach out and do OPEC Plus and bring in Russia, and it's been a very successful partnership. A little bit of a tiff in 2020, which was resolved within a month. But the United States should act in its own best interests, as should every other country in the world. It's wonderful when these interests are aligned, and it's a lot of effort should be put into it, and compromises should be made. But it's in Saudi Arabia's own best interest to maintain a working relationship with Russia. And if this is an interesting phrase, to say it's as warm as the weather in Riyadh, but I think it's probably the case. Certainly on the oil front, they want to keep this relationship going. I should also say, nobody can predict the markets right now. Saudis are very cautious, extremely cautious. It's fluctuated wildly in just over in the last 18 months. We don't know what's going to happen with China. We don't know what's going to happen with inflation. The economy is slowing down. In a minute, Saudi Arabia OPEC just increased its monthly gain by 50%. It was about basically a little over 400,000 barrels a month per day, a month increase, which was scheduled through August. They upped that to a little over 600,000. But again, they don't know what's going to happen to the market. And, they certainly don't want to be in a position where we go, okay, we'll open the spigots and all of a sudden the economy crashes. Price crashes as well. It's just not in their interest. So they're going to behave responsibly in that regard. And the reason I go on about this is because so many, U.S. commentators and media are surprised, stunned, amazed. Why doesn't Saudi Arabia do exactly what we want them to do? It's not entirely in their interests. So they'll try and split the difference, maintain both sides. It's what countries do. Is my rant over?
No, I think that's really good. That's actually in my notes here to sort of focus on the self-interest part of this, because this really brings it to light. If you're Saudi Arabia looking at the Russian invasion of Ukraine, you're saying this is probably not the best thing to happen, although oil prices have gone up as a result. And maybe if you're a Saudi or a leader in Saudi Arabia, you don't like what you're seeing there. You have seen a lot of the world in turmoil as a result. Inflation, food prices, like the knock-on effects are all the way around the world and back again. But I think it's really important, as you said, Richard, to just understand that Saudi Arabia looking at the invasion of Ukraine and then looking at the strength and how much effort and the value of the alliance with Russia and OPEC Plus is, to get Saudi Arabia to cancel Russia as the West has done, that is a massive ask for Saudi Arabia. There's a lot at stake for them doing that versus, the United States doing it. Well, we didn't really have the warmest relationship with Russia to begin with. And after the invasion of Ukraine, those are our values in the United States, or at least we like to say they are, or the policymakers say they are. In Saudi Arabia, it is a completely different calculus. And I think it shouldn't be surprising to us that this is happening, at least.
Yes. Agreed, but we always constantly seem surprised by it. And there may, when push comes to shove at some point, and that's one of the conversations that'll be had in Jeddah in July, is the U.S. wants these Gulf states and our partners to choose us and to throw in their lot with us. We have to give them more compelling reasons to do so, updated reasons to do so. But again, no country worth its salt, no diplomat worth his sash, is gonna cut off relationships that might be of real value in the event that something else might, fill the void. The whole point of these international relationships is to keep them, use them, build them, and help try and create a situation where you have fallbacks and you have redundancies and so this is something Saudi Arabia makes sense for Saudi Arabia to do.
And just to sort of add on that, you kind of mentioned this, and I think it's a really great point. Oil prices are really high right now. And to the U.S., they're very, very high. Depending on who you're asking, they're high or they're higher. But the reality is that about 2 years ago, they were negative on the WTI. They were way down. And what happens when oil is very low? It becomes very easy in the West to start talking about climate change and weaning off fossil fuels. So if you're Saudi Arabia or another oil producer, you're saying, okay, oil prices are low. All you're going to do is say, we have to stop buying oil because it's so cheap and it's plentiful and there's no reason economically to get off of it. When oil prices are high, you're mad at us for not, taking to task Russia over the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It's just sort of like there isn't a good side of this, for Saudi Arabia, for any other oil producer. So, I mean, they're sort of thinking longer term than just these 3 to 6 months or the next 6 to 12 months. They're thinking about oil's price in the next decade, 2 decades. They're also working to go green by 2060, So, I mean, there's just a lot going on here, but for them to sort of react to everything that America wants instantaneously, I don't see why they would do that. But I mean, anyway, it's an interesting story. It's, there's a lot to get into here. Yeah.
We quoted, I pulled a quote from Richard Haas, head of the Council on Foreign Relations. He wrote in The Strategist last week. And in it, he talked about the U.S. dealing, the trip and the handshake with Biden handshake with MBS. And he talked about the imperative that realism must trump idealism with regard to U.S. foreign policy. It's the same thing for Saudi Arabia. Yeah, I think, they cringe at the invasion of Ukraine. They see it as wrong. I'm sure it's unjust. They see it as illegal. They see it as, extremely unfortunate in that it's sort of put a halt and a freeze, a damper on a recovering global economy after the pandemic. It's just an ill-timed, really not well thought out adventure by Vladimir Putin. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean that Saudi realism should be trumped by idealism. I mean, it's the realistic thing to do is to maintain the relationship despite your disagreement with that decision to go into Ukraine and any other number of disagreements. We have to remember Saudi Arabia had zero interest in doing anything with communist Russia because of it's an atheist country. And one of the reasons, obviously they were active in supporting the Mujahideen in Afghanistan and pushing back and being a U.S. ally. Part of that was, again, the communist atheism. They got past that, again, because realism has to trump idealism for every country. Mm-hmm. Yellen number 3, Egypt and Saudi Arabia signed 14 agreements valued at close to $8 billion during a recent visit to Cairo by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. According to Sharq al-Assad. Majid al-Kassabi, Saudi Minister of Commerce, announced that there were agreements that cover the fields of renewable energy, oil infrastructure, and cybersecurity.
Yeah, Dr. Majid al-Kassabi flew from D.C. to Egypt, I think, to meet from the visit we just talked about, to meet Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Other deals involved include the development of the multi-purpose terminal at Egypt's Damietta port and a $150 million, quote, pharmaceutical city by Egypt's Farco Pharmaceuticals in Saudi Arabia. So, yeah, just sort of like we were talking about, Richard, there was a big political, diplomatic there was a lot of meaning behind these visits this week, but there was also a lot of money behind these visits and a lot of bilateral trade deals going on. And, it's very common for, a head of state or a de facto head of state or a top leader in a state to visit somewhere and have some deliverables and say, okay, well, we've got, $100 billion in MOUs or whatever it used to be, big announcements, because it just shows that, hey, look, there's future stuff here. So, just interesting. Egypt-Saudi relations are at all-time highs for sure.
I mentioned the one big thing. Egypt and Saudi Arabia are close, and it's very important for Saudi Arabia that be the case. I mean, culturally, Egypt is preponderant in the region, and a lot. It's funny, the cinema opens in Saudi Arabia. One of the surprising things is how well. It's not surprising. It's surprising to maybe Westerners. Some of the leading offerings are Egyptian movies. Same thing in TV. I mean, this is a country that Saudis look to in many ways, but also strategically. I mean, it's a country of 100 million plus. It's a country with a significant military force. 3 million Egyptians work in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia and Egypt have been on the same page, diplomatically with regard to their aversion and worry and concern about political Islam and the Muslim Brotherhood. So in the regional context, Saudi Arabia has been very, very eager and ready to make sure to protect Egypt and help underpin it financially. In March, Saudi Arabia deposited $5 billion in Egypt's central bank. And there's more where that came from. Obviously, there's these agreements. Again, are part of strengthening a relationship that's important to Saudi Arabia and very important to Egypt, especially when now it's being sort of buffeted by high grain prices and the economy is dealing with inflation. I should also add, it's sort of, with NEOM's going to be right there at the corner of Jordan and Egypt, and these relationships are important in and of themselves, but there's an added element there where if you're building this huge, extraordinary greenfield project, you want to have good relationships with the immediate neighbors, and they are immediate neighbors.
Yeah, and then of course we have talked about it a lot on the show, but the transfer of those two islands as well from Egypt to Saudi Arabia. I mean, if you're Saudi Arabia, it's a great point about NEOM. You really want your next door neighbor to the $500 billion quote unquote city that you're building to not be a failing economy, because that just directly affects you. So, you just, it's good in Saudi Arabia's self-interest to do that, but it's also a good neighborly thing to do.
Yeah, and that's it. I think I think you're right when you characterize it's a really close relationship right now.
Mm-hmm. Yella number 4, Richard. Saudi Arabia ranks first in the Arab world for scientific research. Saudi Arabia's education topped the list of Arab countries and ranked 30th internationally in the British Nature Index for evaluating countries, universities, and public and private institutions for the year 2022 in quality of scientific research, reported the SPA.
I don't have much to add here. I will say this. The U.S. News and World Report, top universities in the U.S. is always a big deal when it comes out. But what they found over the years was all these universities and colleges started working to the metrics, trying to sort of game the survey and that sort of thing, because it became so influential. My point here is really that at the end of the day, it's hard to fully understand the details of what went into this ranking for us laymen. Obviously, the people doing this, they could tell you chapter and verse, and I'm sure it's very quantitative and rigorous. But what I do know is, as Saudi Arabia is trying to up the caliber of its universities and its education system in general, but the universities in particular, it's getting a lot of accolades and recognition now. And so I'm going to just name 3. So just in April, the UK Times Higher Education Impact Rankings in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for year 2022. Again, Saudi Arabia went from 3 universities listed in 2019 to 22 this year. In April, again, in the World University Rankings, Saudi Arabia went from 9 in 2019 ranked to 14 in 2022. And in May, in the SCI ranking, it moved to the 22nd globally in number of research outcomes when it was ranked 32nd in 2018. So I guess my point is these metrics do mean something to Saudi Arabia, because this is how they key a lot of their Vision 2030 goals. They find metrics, and I think in particular the Times Higher Education one is one they look at. So what you're seeing, you can argue with the how things are done or what they emphasize or this or that, but there's a whole slew of ranking systems, university and education ranking systems, that are reflecting significant upward movement by Saudi institutions. And it's sort of across the board. So that reflects really well, I think, on the general direction of these universities and the Saudi educational system.
Yeah, it makes me think of the time, Richard, we visited my boy Saad at Al Majma University, which, was one of the most incredible experiences.
That was fun.
Obviously great to see Saad, but also incredible to see Al Majma University, which really wasn't there,
Yeah.
a decade or two ago, and then was being built in Al Majma, Saudi Arabia, which is, about 2 hours north of Riyadh. I hope I have the direction correctly.
Yeah, that's right.
And then just built from the ground up, brand new, impressive university with, climbing in the rankings of higher learning, obviously hires really talented people inside and others, and was just sort of mind blowing to see, it's not just lip service that they're trying to invest in education. They're actually building internationally respected universities from the ground up. Takes time to do that, takes time to build a reputation. But this is good. And, there's only more of this stuff coming, in my opinion. So
and getting recognized, that's a key. So like I said, we don't know the details because we're not experts in the field, but it's clear it's clear that they're doing something different because it's getting recognized by any number of metrics in any number of organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were flying the drone, Richard. I remember it got lost and we were like, well, it's become self-aware. It's just going to fly away now. I don't know if it's coming back. A lot of fun, but yeah, very good. A good one. I think you're up now for number 5. Am I right on that? Yep.
All right, number 5, Yella number 5. Brooks Koepka keeps the drip of golf defectors from the PGA to Saudi Arabia's PIF-backed Live Golf Tour, joining Abraham Answer, Aussie Abraham Answer last week. Brooks Koepka was one of the first players to announce the rival league for only Fortinet players. Is now the latest PGA Tour player to sign on with the Live Golf Series. The Associated Press has learned.
So, Richard, it's so funny because we're going to talk about golf for a little bit, everybody. Sorry. But, when we first started following this story, which was the first week it happened, was after we launched the 966 podcast. And then we were following it fairly closely, and it built up to, about a month ago where it looked like they would not get a single golfer, like not a single professional golfer would join the PIF backed Live Golf Tour. And we said, hey, that's okay. As long as this thing is well funded, you get it out the door, you have these big paychecks, hopefully some young golfers join. What has happened has been nothing short of incredible disruption in the sport of golf that has literally everybody following professional golf talking. And what has been interesting, Richard, is sort of to see the opinions evolve, to sort of see almost half of all commentators on Instagram and Facebook defending the players and blasting the PGA's commissioner, Jay Monahan, for sort of handling this in a flat-footed way and saying, with some hubris, this is the league you play in if you have any self-respect. I know you don't get paid what others do. And the players just said, hey, you know what? Like, we're going to take the money. And I think that what is happening now with Live Golf, Richard, you and I both have sort of said this is a really good chance for people to whip up on Saudi Arabia, and that's true. But I think what Live Golf is doing has never really been done quite this way before. Just a total startup, new league, tons of money behind it in this sport. It's so cool to watch. I think we have 20 of the top 100 players from the PGA Tour now with Live Golf. Who knows what these events are really going to look like, especially when they kick off here in the U.S. shortly. But yeah, these players, big mistake from the PGA to not treat them as the independent contractors that they are. They're probably now going to sue the PGA. Just unbelievable, the story. Truly.
Well, it's like we said last week, it's glad to finally get underway. Yeah, it's a ruckus. Currently 8 of the top 50 have moved over to ranked players, have moved over to Live. I guess the most telling thing is how, and I'm not sure, I haven't heard a lot of, in the U.S., a lot of positive comment on this. It's still very negative overall, I think. That's from my experience. But the telling thing is the PGA is just scrambling. The Monahan just had a players only meeting before the TPC, the recent upcoming tournament, and announced that purses at 8 existing events will increase to an average of 20 million. They're they've changed the schedule. They're trying to be more adaptive to players' preferences. They're going to do I think 3 international events with limited fields for top 50 players and FedEx Cup points, in which there won't be any cuts and prize money, so everybody gets a cut. They've already got the player impact program in place, put in last year, I think, which was worth $50 million. So basically they're scrambling. And this is the thing. I actually think Greg Norman proposed the World Super League back when he played, and he was shut down by Tom Fincham, who I think was the head of PGA at the time. And obviously some of that resentment is what drives him now. As I said before, I think the LIV just needs to go about its business. It's got announced schedules through 2025. It's got money. It's got a compelling financial allure for a lot of players who are disgruntled. So the PGA is trying to deal with this. It's the first time. I think this is what got Phil Mickelson in trouble. Was he sort of cynically used LIV to leverage his own interests, and it got him in trouble. But now he's on the LIV tournament, and let's face it, there are some disgruntled players that have moved over to the LIV tournament, but they're disgruntled for a reason. And so we'll see what happens. Just keep playing, keep plugging, do the work. It's clearly, as I've said before, a real threat to the PGA, specifically the non-majors. A lot of this comes down to, as we know, the LIV players are allowed to play in U.S. Open. They've now been allowed to play in the British Open. Mm-hmm. A lot of this will come down to the Masters, which is the granddaddy, the big kahuna. Mm-hmm. The Masters says, yeah, come along. We don't want to do this without significant numbers of the best players in the world. It doesn't make sense. It's a major. That really empowers those players who are not happy with the PGA, not happy with the schedule, not happy with the payouts. If they feel like they can go and do a competitive tour, still do the majors, and we'll see that they've also LIV has also put in to try and have LIV tournaments qualify for FedEx points. So it's all finally underway. We're all dealing with it. I think, like you said, it's a big ruckus because it's finally out there, and then they have to deal with the reality of LIV tournament. And we'll see LIV tour. Let's see how it works out. But it's a threat, and it's a really real threat, as we've talked about, to these non-major tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see them. I mean, and I could be wrong because I'm not, fully immersed in the golf world, but I don't see the upside for the Masters in keeping the LIV golfers out. They're not part of the PGA. It's its own standalone tournament. It also happens to be one of the most prestigious and sacred events globally in the world of sporting. It's the hardest ticket to get. You got to get onto a waiting list. It's highly watched. It's such an incredible production. So I don't see why they would go and side with the PGA and say 20 of the best world's golfers can't come and play with us. What is in it for them to do that? And maybe you know, or I'm missing something here, but it just seems like if I'm organizing a major tournament, the last thing I'm going to do is say, hey, Jay Monahan, you totally messed this up, and now you have 2 golf leagues, and you want me to say that these players can't come play. That just weakens my tournament. I'm interested in the tournament that I'm hosting, and that is, the Masters would be the next big one after the British Open has already made the decision. So, I mean, yeah, this is just such an interesting story, and it will be interesting too to see what type of league rule changes stick and what fans like. They're billing LIV golf as golf but louder. I think that's interesting to a lot of fans who are a little bored and a little put off by how routine and sleepy some of this coverage seems to them. So anyway, we could go on and on about this. We should get someone from the golf world on the podcast at some point, Richard, maybe after some of the dust settles. But very interesting story, at least to us.
Yeah, I think it needs to shake out a little bit, and then we can come back and revisit it because there's some shaking out that's going to go on.
Yellow number 6 on the 7th of June, almost 25 days before the Hajj. The Saudi Arabian government has announced new Hajj rules and regulations that oblige the citizens of the U.S., U.K., Europe, and Australia to register for the annual pilgrimage via a government website, Motawif. I hope I'm saying that right. Chances are I'm not. This online portal has been designed to give Western Muslims visas based on the results of an automated lottery system. Cool.
This was a big deal, and it's a big change. Interesting that it was done just so shortly before the Hajj. Hajj starts July 7th. And essentially what it says, so typically, if you're a Haji or doing your Umrah or doing the Hajj, you engage with a local travel agent and you arrange for it, and they do that, and you go and you do this, and you do the Hajj. Now you go through this Mutawif. If you're not a Saudi, if you're overseas, and you go through the Mutawif website to first apply to see if you're in the lottery, but also if you get the lottery and every country has a quota, and we'll talk about that a little bit. If you get the lottery, and then you have an opportunity to choose among packages, silver, gold, platinum. I guess silver starting at just under $6,000, platinum, starting at just under $10,000. These packages include flights, accommodations, domestic transportation, catering, and depending on the length of stay, the cost goes up or down. But it's a brand new system, and I think Saudi Arabia instituted it in part because they trying to avoid fraud, trying to deal with health issues, trying to sort of regulate and better formalized processes. I mean, it put a bunch of travel agents, slews of travel agents in many, many countries out of business, because a lot of travel agents make most of their money on these pilgrimages, Umrah and Hajj. So it's been disruptive, and the first time, I think the Mutawif, when the website opened the first night, it crashed. It's back up and running now, and they seem to be working. But so, for example, if these are Mutawif, the organized flights, in order for you to get there from the U.S., and the U.S. has, and in terms of its quota to do this Hajj, the U.S. has, I think, 9,500, and they have to depart to Saudi Arabia either from New York or Washington D.C. So you got to find your way there and then get over there. So it's a big deal. I mean, it's a big change, and maybe it'll be better. Maybe it'll be better regulated. Maybe you'll have fewer inconsistencies, less fraud, a generally higher quality product and experience for folks. But this is the first go round. They're giving it a shot.
Big websites like this, when they launch with millions of people potentially going to visit them, almost usually always collapse. Like I'm thinking about the U.S healthcare.gov website, which, is a great idea and was very cool, but, it just, this is the way this is a really good step forward in the right direction for Saudi Arabia, for sure.
Well, you think, and, the politics of the Hajj are enormous. So there's always a lot of criticism. And just doing the quotas, I mean, they did 1 million this year. And again, they're trying to be reasonable. They did 1 million non-Saudis. First full year back after the pandemic. So they're still trying to control it a little bit, manage it, and there's requirements. You have to be under 65 years old, vaccinated against COVID-19, negative PCR test taken just before departing for the kingdom. So there's still a lot of restrictions in place. But again, like I said, it's a political thing, and it's tough to assign quotas. So, for example, that's 1 million. I mean, the highest number assigned is Indonesia, which makes sense because it has over 200 million Muslims. India, and Indonesia is 100,000. India is just under 80,000. Pakistan, 81,000. So, Turkey, 37,000. But, the Emirates, 2,800. Obviously, Emirates is small. Yemen, just under 11,000. So all these things are fraught and political. And, when you're running something that's gargantuan and enormous and meaningful and emotional as this, you're going to run into problems. But like you say, this may help eliminate inefficiencies and fraud and make the experience better for Hajis coming to Saudi Arabia.
Perhaps the third hardest working man in Saudi Arabia is the Minister of Hajj and Umrah, which, seems to me like one of the biggest, most difficult things to do in the whole world. So,
I didn't even know this. When we talked with Dhay Aldhawyan, she said that she met Dr. Majid Al-Kasbi when he was acting Minister of Umrah 2019-2020. I didn't even know this. That's yet another job that man had. Just incredible.
Incredible. And good to see him this last week. Richard, let's put a fork in this one.
Yes, indeed.
I'm glad you've got your power back. Everything's right with the world again. Thank you to everybody for listening to us again. All this stuff goes out as segments. We sort of trickle them out a little bit on YouTube so we don't just flood your inbox for our subscribers, but subscribe to us wherever you get this. And Richard, thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you for being patient, Lucian. This was just had a lot of jumping and dancing and making it happen, but it happened.
It happened. It always does. You can set your watch to this show. I'll see you next week.